Bernie Ecclestone, you were reported in the media recently as saying that F1 doesn't need young fans. Yes, that's right. What did you mean exactly? Well, you know, young people. What do you mean by young? Well, anyone younger than me, I suppose. How old are you now, Mr. Ecclestone? 85 next birthday. So that probably means 90% of the people on Earth are younger than you. Exactly. Now F off and leave me alone with my money. Yum, 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 yum. Hello, welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed. I'm Gareth. He's Zog.
Hello.
And he's Richard.
Hello.
This is a very honest programme. Gareth Jones on Speed, I always say, is at its best when it's just the three of us talking like three soft lads in a pub, right? We don't cheat, or do we? Because I have to put my hands
I've
up
never
now.
cheated on you, Gareth, I swear.
Are you seeing other podcasts?
Yeah, exactly. How about that time that you did Timmy Mallet at Pace? You did that.
I was hoping you weren't going to bring that up.
I do occasionally cheat on this programme. I don't know if either of you two even realise, but occasionally, if one of us misspeaks during a lengthy train of thought and one of us says, for instance, Maestro instead of Montego,
or accidentally says biscuit in the middle of a sentence.
Let's read it again.
I haven't done that for biscuit ages.
I will nip out the wrong word in the edit and use where that person says the right word from another point in the edit, and you can't even tell the difference, honestly. So I would know if that's cheating, that's papering over the cracks, right? But Formula One, there's been some superb cheating. Sadly, not for a while. I'm trying to think what was the most...
As far as we know.
Yeah, exactly, yes. That's the skill of it, isn't it? It's lying and getting away with it.
Well, and also, what exactly do you mean by cheating?
Because there's outright brazen cheating, knowing that you're doing something wrong, and there's bending the rules and pushing them to the fullest extent of your understanding of the rules.
Okay, let's start with interpretation of the rules.
Okay.
For instance, the Braun 2009 car, read the fact that you couldn't have a double diffuser as meaning you can have a double diffuser, and won the championship on the back of that.
Yeah, and similarly, McLaren's F-duct, that to me is a great example of ingenuity, of smart thinking, good design, and seeing an opportunity. I can't remember who it was that said, there's no such thing as the spirit of the regulations, there are only the regulations.
It was you.
No, I think it was a designer.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But that's it, if you can, you read those regulations, you read them again, then you read them again and again, and then you find a way within those regulations to do something a little bit cleverer, a little bit quicker.
6 wheels on your P34 Tyrrell. It did not say your car had to have 4 wheels, so they made a car with 6 wheels. Okay, so that's interpretation of the rules, but there have been some outright cheating, not just in F1, but in other motorsports as well. Richard, who would you nominate as the biggest cheat in Formula 1? Or motorsport?
I'd like to keep my house. So, I don't know. You can't libel the dead, can you? There's some tremendous stories about Tom Walkinshaw, his reinterpretations of the rules. There was one story about, I can't remember which race series this was, not Formula 1, where they were sort of mandated a certain hotness of cam that they were allowed to use. And supposedly, if the inspectors came around to have a little check of their cam lobes, they'd hoik it out of the engine and then go, hang on, I'll just clean it up for you, dunk it into a sort of oily barrel of water to clean it. There'd be another one in there, they'd pull that one out because it was legit and not the really hot one that they'd just taken out of the car. I don't know if that's true. Let's just hope that it is. That's sleight of hand, isn't it? It
is sleight of hand, and that's over the line. For me, if you're the designer that comes up with the F-duct, brilliant. And I think that in recent years, that's one of my favourite bits of F1 smartness, because it's not a massively expensive solution that requires you to spend a huge amount of money refining and developing this particular widget. It's just, we can do this. And bingo, you go quicker. I love that kind of thinking. On the other hand, if you're just fragrantly swapping one thing for another when somebody's checking it, that's just cheating. I do admire the
but there's also, I think there's some examples that fall between the two. And was it, again, the risk of libeling or defaming somebody? There was a rally team, or was a company whose rallying outfit were told, in the old days, the homologation rules, you had to make 200 examples of cars. And they hadn't made 200 examples. And the FIA inspectors or whatever were turning up. And so they just did some glorious sleight where basically they went, OK, well, here you go. Here's a car park. Oh, I think there's probably about 50 cars, 70 cars here, and you can see them here. Should we go for lunch? And they went for lunch and they came back and went, oh, and this warehouse here, I think there's probably the other 100 and something cars thereabouts. We're still making some, so there's probably about 70 in here. Same cars, they just moved them all.
Yeah. I'd heard that.
Again, apocryphal story. I really hope it's true because it reminds me, if you ever remember that kids' programme Bagpuss that was on when I was a kid.
Yes.
The mice with the
mouse organ.
chocolate, the magical mouse organ, but the chocolate biscuit factory one. And they showed Bagpuss had got a factory that made chocolate biscuits, and then he figured out that it was actually the same 2 chocolate biscuits that would come out of the front and go around the back and put them back in again.
So
Same game.
Is this the first example of cheating in motorsport
Inspired by Bagpuss? It probably was, yeah.
The possibly best and worst examples of cheating, in my opinion, I'll start with the worst. I think the worst was, and we can say this because they were caught, was when Flav instructed Piquet Jr. to hit the wall in Singapore because Alonso was leading to allow him to win the race. Now, that was cheating, interpreting the rules, the sporting rules at the time. Pretty nasty.
I heard that in a way that could suggest that you were suggesting that they were just being very clever and okay.
No,
which is clearly,
terrible for all the wrong reasons. I can't. Yeah, it's dreadful. Conspiracy, horrible conspiracy. However, my favourite bit of cheating in Formula One goes back to 1984. The Human League, the alarm, gas top, that period. Tyrrell in Formula One struggling with a car that just couldn't perform against the turbo cars of the age. So they had a car with
had very clever brakes, didn't it?
Very clever.
Very
needed to run cools
unnecessarily clever brakes.
Yes, that's right. They needed water injection to keep them cool during the race. So the car had these 2, I believe, water reservoirs on board. So you'd weigh the car before the race. It would go out onto the grid and then the driver would pop the valve which would release, 20 kilograms of water over the track. You got a nice light car that would do very well. That itself was clever, but how are you going to get away with that? It was the solution to the fix to make the car legal at the end of the race, which I think was the most outrageous and superb bit of cheating in Formula One ever. The mechanics, as I understand it, who pushed the car into Parc Fermé, up their sleeves had a pocket and a release where they could drop, I think it was up to 20 kilograms of lead shot back into pockets on the car, whether it was the exhaust or some hideable, cubby hole or something. So the car was back up to weight at the end of the race.
But they also topped it up with water, didn't they? Because the regulation said that you could
top up with fluids.
Yeah, because when they weighed the car, you were allowed to top up any fluids before the stewards. So the
fluids had lead shot.
So they may well have been putting the shot in, but they were also filling up the empty water reservoirs. No, I agree. I love that. I absolutely love that. I also loved...
You've never done that before, is it?
Sorry, I think I had to bell earlier on.
The good news, the chicken tikka masala is done.
It's a text from my wife. This is how exciting our lives are. It's a text from my wife telling me that when I go home tonight, not to worry letting the dog out, but she's actually put, the dog has weed. I didn't even know that my dog was a stoner, but that would explain why she's calmed down quite a lot recently. Yeah, dog has weed, so it's no need to go down to Brixton and make some dodgy phone calls. The other parts of London are available to buy drugs in.
You're in Hackney.
We used to walk through Camden Town, and I always used to get a bit disgruntled that no one would ever offer me drugs. Not that I wanted to buy them, but I was just quite indignant about it, because my wife would always get offered drugs, and I'd go, why are they not offering me? She'd just go, because you're too square. I demand to be offered drugs I don't want. And then I remembered my mate Ben's elder brother once was out, same thing in Camden Town with a friend of his, and they were a bit drunk, and this guy went to us and stuff, and they went, no, we're right. And he went, yeah, I thought not. And this guy went,
well, why did you ask?
Well, no, but this thing. So my mate brother Daniel got really indignant, and so did his friend, and they ended up buying some crack
just to prove a point.
So then Daniel stayed at his mate's house that night. He was woken in the morning by his mate going, "Daniel, we bought crack last night," and then they panicked and flushed it down the loo. Anyway, we digress. The reason I got my laptop open is because I wanted to just check who this was. It was something that just reminded me about cheating quite recently in the DTM. Matthias Ekstrom was caught afterwards. He'd won the race. He went up to hug his dad and some members of his team at the railing. But TV footage showed that all these people were there primed with bottles of water, which they shoved into the pockets of his Nomex to drench it, to just put a bit of extra weight in, because they knew he was underweight.
Oh, that's subtle,
and he
isn't
got
it?
done for it. And I just looked this up to remind me who it was. And then Audi, who was driving for, appealed because he was disqualified, and it seems like it was rejected.
They proved he was incontinent. No. If you look, it's yellow, and that's why he's heavier.
But yeah, and that's
and that's clear. No question, cheating. Sticking with the borderline tricks, like the Tyrrell brake trick, the other one that I thought was particularly admirable was the thing that Gordon Murray came up with for the Brabham, the 81 Brabham. No, the fan car, again, fantastic. Again, great example of lateral thinking. No, it was the car that had a trick suspension. I think it was 1981, I think it was. It had trick suspension, which had dampers such that when the car was on track, basically, he'd figured out that he wanted to reduce the ride height, but the ride height had to be a minimum of so many centimetres. But they measured that when the car was stationary. So he came up with some trick dampers in the suspension that, as the car was under aerodynamic load and being pressed down to the track, the dampers would squash down, but the return rate was incredibly slow. And unless the car was actually not being pushed down to the track for, a good few seconds, it wouldn't rise back up.
Keeping it generally
So
low.
Basically, all the time you're running on track, it was squashed down at its lower ride height. As soon as you stopped circulating, comes back up. Oh, and also the other bit was that because he knew that all of the other engineers and all the other teams were going to take a look at the car and see what was going on, something's not right with this, what's he doing? He put fake bits on the car.
Yes.
He put like
a box with wires.
Exactly.
That was that car?
That was that car, yeah. So, that is the gold medal.
There was nothing in the box, we should say. It was just a box with wires. It was distraction like magicians use. Look at this.
So what do they call it?
Misdirection,
yes.
How about that? I got a word. Yeah. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, I think Formula One misses cheating. And by that I mean, I want Flav back.
No.
He's 60-10.
So, lap 14 of this third race in the all-new, all-cheating 2015 F1 Championship. The top three remain the same, all running their suspiciously hot engines and brakes, and have all now pitted for their non-sanctioned extra grippy tyres. Now the question is, which one of the back markers will be the first to deliberately crash?
Sniff Petrol with Gareth Jones on speed!
Here's a sentence I bet I've said before on Gareth Jones on speed. I went to Wales the other week. That happens quite a lot. But I decided to go in a car which I'd seen around and about in London and thought, that's actually quite a cool car now. Better than it used to be. The car I'm talking about is the Volkswagen Beetle, or the new Beetle, as we prefer to identify it these days. And that is the new Beetle. Because the previous generation Beetle, which pretty much introduced the whole retro thing to us all, was a good car, but it looked like it was drawn by someone from Playmobil, I think. It looked like a cartoon of a car, three simple semicircles. And that centre one, which is the cabin, was just a bit too tall. Now, the new generation Beetle doesn't have that pronounced semicircle for the cabin. It flattens off, rather more like the original KDF wagon of the 1930s, the car which the Beetle grew from. I think in doing that, it's gone from being an interesting car to being quite a cool car. I think it looks cool. Have you noticed the Beetle around, Richard? Do you like it?
No and no.
You don't like it? Why don't you like it?
I don't mind it. I think it's better looking than the last one. There's a sort of crispness to it that VW do very well. It's still quite a sort of bubbly shape, but actually each individual panel and line is quite sculpted. And I do admire that, but I just don't like it because of its retroness and because I think it's still quite cutesy And you don't really see them around. I don't understand why particularly, but the Mini and the Fiat 500, the two retro cars that, you're right, kind of...
It opened the way
it had opened a door for that sort of car design. Are runaway successes, and I don't think the Beetle is. I'll be really interested to see if VW replace it.
Really?
The first generation new Beetle in the US was a huge hit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever really done the business here. It's a bit niche, and it's a bit pricey. It probably costs them not much to build because they make it in Mexico, so I guess labour costs are lower. And it's based on the last generation Golf, so it's, the development costs have been written off yonks ago on that. And I think, as far as I know, it doesn't have the fancy multi-link back axle that you can get on Golfs.
Can't have.
It's just a beam axle, so it's pretty low-tech. The old Beetle used the 8-valve 2-litre engine for a lot of its life. It's an engine family from the 70s.
Your observation about the Mini and the Fiat 500 there made me think, why don't we see more Beetles than 500s and Minis? And I think the answer is size. It's an American car. It's built for the Mexican and the American market. It's great. Can you imagine, though, if VW had based this car not on the Golf platform but on the Polo platform? Imagine a car that looked like a Beetle but was about the size of the Mini or the Fiat 500. How cute would it be?
Yeah,
how much would
we talked about this on the show before.
Not on the show. No, not the show. We had a conversation.
Oh, did we? Was it real life?
It was real life conversation. Yeah,
because that's the thing. I don't think you could do it because you need the sort of
problem.
The scale to be able to get those
curves,
proportions and those curves.
There's a lot of wasted space because of the styling.
The cabin is tiny compared to the footprint of the car, and it would be a two-seater.
And that sort of three semicircle design, that sort of three curve design, is quite limiting. I think you're quite right. The newer new Beetle is an improvement. The old one suffered from, in a way, I think, trying to kind of execute too thoroughly this design concept, and didn't quite work.
Did have its benefits. I have a mate called Rob Hart who lives out in Pasadena, and Rob is probably over 74 feet tall. He's a very tall man, very, very tall man, and he could only buy two cars in America that he could drive. One was the new Beetle, because there was enough headroom for him. It was perfect for a tall person. And the other one, surprisingly, was...
Fiat 500 with a hole cut in the roof.
Yeah, with his head completely clear of it. No, it was...
this is that gag off The Simpsons. Do you remember? There's a whole thing with a very tall man in an old-school Beetle, and Nelson, laughs at him, and the guy stops and gets out and grabs him by the scruff and goes, does my choice of automobile amuse you? And there's a whole thing about it.
I remember that. So Rob's other car that he could fit in, I've just remembered, was the Ford/Mazda/Kia, when Kia was part owned by Mazda, Aspire. Do you remember the Aspire?
The Festiva.
Was it the Aspire or was it the 121? It was the 121.
121 with the canvas roof that went back.
Yeah, he could fit in there. So it was certainly successful for America as a bigger car. You're right, it would be quite a small car if it was based on a smaller
I think
platform.
It would be tiny, because if you think about the overall width of the car, the cabin then sits inboard of that because the wings have to stand proud. That's what annoys me about it. It's designed for design's sake. It's sort of willfully compromised in a way that, and I don't mind, if something looks stylish, then you compromise functionality a little bit, but I think it's just idiotic because I don't think it's stylish, I suppose.
But what I would do with it is allude to those wings in the design. It doesn't actually have to have the full wings, but you can suggest them in the design. I think you can get a car of that look into that size. In the meantime, we're stuck with this one, which is a great car. I chose a Brave engine for the car. How many engines? There are 29 different engines you can have in the Beetle. Actually, I think there's 5, I think. I didn't read this. But the engine I chose was the 1.2 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder, which is a Polo engine, I suppose, to get it in the Golf as well. Not the most powerful engine in the world. Perhaps not the best engine for that car. I got 38 miles to the gallon. It was reasonably willing. It had the DSG gearbox, which was nice, but it stopped it from being a driver's car. I think there probably are Beetles with bigger engines. Well, there are Beetles with bigger engines that are probably much better driver's cars. But you know what? This was the Cabriolet. And the people who are going to buy the Cabriolet aren't going to be buying this car to drive it. They'll be buying this car to enjoy it. And I really enjoyed it.
Cruise rather than drive.
Yeah, man, it's a minimum automobile. The original Beetle was not a performance car, was it?
It was a car for everybody.
Yeah.
A car for...
And I think this tiny engine allows it to be exactly that, a car for everybody. Well, a car for everybody who doesn't care about cars. Yeah, convertible for everybody. And it was fun. The roof popped back, no problem, in about 7 seconds. roof's gone.
That's incredibly quick.
Yeah, it felt like it.
Wow.
But that is one of the less exciting areas of automotive technology that really has come along, in the last.
Well, I remember the
years,
Honda S2000 set a
so
new
much better.
benchmark a while back.
It may have been 9 seconds, sorry.
I think, because the Honda S2000 was something I forget, like 12 seconds, and that seemed like it was mind-bogglingly fast. The crucial thing was, it was fast enough to be able to put it back at some traffic lights. Because there's nothing worse. I did this in a Lexus SC430.
Yep,
That
pudding.
big
Slightly
pudding
awkward
one.
one. Yeah.
With the folding metal roof,
Yeah.
and tried to put it back at some traffic lights. Lights changed. I panicked and drove off with the roof half down. People, probably Nelson
Then
out
being
of the
very
Simpsons,
embarrassed.
going ha ha because he looks stupid. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah,
I think
you-
particularly in this country, you see someone putting the roof back on their convertible, and people think flashed. That's the thing. So the quicker you can get that over and done with, the less people are looking at
And
you.
in the
Yep,
defence of the Beetle, I at no point felt when I took the roof off that anyone looked at me in this car, which is what they call denim blue, which is a good colour for a Beetle. Do you remember the 1970s Beetle 1303 Jeans edition? Do you remember that, Richard? You know,
I've heard of
the
it.
seats were actually covered in denim with studs. It was so cool. I loved that car.
How 70s is
The
that?
70s.
Yeah, I was there, man. I wanted that car. So this was not a threatening convertible. If you're going to drive an unthreatening convertible, there are some convertibles you look at and you go, oh, God, that's a terrible car. The Mitsubishi, I'm thinking of, amongst others. A little Colt.
Oh, my Lord, that was
horrific.
awful, yeah.
But the Beetle convertible, it's a friendly, unthreatening, joyous car. I really enjoyed my time in that car because I got let in at junctions. Everyone loves a Beetle.
I don't.
Apart from you.
I don't. I think
Yeah.
that's part of my problem with the modern Beetle is I hate the old Beetle. So
Oh.
it's basically.
You ever owned one?
An old Beetle? No, I've driven them quite a lot,
Yeah.
and I still hate them. So I feel like I've done my bit.
when
Yeah,
you
I
say-
made a whole program about them years ago.
And you do mean old Beetle?
Yeah,
as
the
in
air-cooled ones,
You're
yeah.
old,
I just
yeah.
like
Rear engine
They're
Beetle.
hateful.
You're driving a
I
car
love them.
today.
I've got a lot of affection for them.
We'll
That's,
continue this
okay,
another
we're going to have to continue this discussion later.
Yeah, possibly with swords on the heath at dawn.
dawn.
If I was going to redesign the Beetle,
Yeah.
which I have to say, was
I
top,
tell you what you do.
you're-
Make it squared off, give it 5 doors, call it the Golf.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a really great family car
You're
for
on something
everyone.
there.
If I was going to redesign the Beetle, it would actually be very much like the car that you're driving today, because you're in a Twingo. You got
Yes.
a Twingo outside.
Yeah.
Proper little rear engine.
Yeah.
You know, it's the nearest thing there is to a Beetle, as I would imagine it. Smaller, and actually put the engine in the back, it would be great.
But why? I mean, that's the thing. I think.
Packaging.
Well, yes, that's the thing. I mean, that's the reason why the engine is at the back in the Twingo. And if you're doing it for a sound, logical reason, as they are, and because they've got economies of scale by buddying up with Smart, the next Smart car is the same underneath, that's fine. I'm quite glad that the one thing Volkswagen didn't do is put the engine at the back in the new Beetle just because I think that would have been even more stupid. And it's the reason the Up was going to be rear
it would.
engine.
It would.
The concept Up was rear engine, and they couldn't get the economies of scale to build a rear engine car when all their other ones are front engined, because they had to adapt the engine so much. They wouldn't have had any commonality with the ones that go into Polos and Golfs and Beetles.
Different cooling requirements.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff,
and the thing because it has to be canted over as well, otherwise you end up with sort of no boot space, which is
Yeah.
what it is in the Twingo. It's
Uh-huh.
sort of its lane not flat, but it's quite angled, and it's the little 3-cylinder turbocharged Smart engine.
I know this is rarely a consideration for a lot of modern cars, but how easy is it to get at and do anything to that Twingo engine?
That's a good question. I haven't looked, but I will look tomorrow because it's dark now. But I haven't looked in the boot. The boot's quite small, but the floor's quite high because there is an engine under there. But I haven't actually looked. I mean, I remember I used to have a Smart Roadster as a long-termer from Evo, and you lifted up the boot floor and you could see the engine, and you had to keep an eye on the oil in that car. And for some reason, I always check the oil when it was hot. I forget why. You're looking at it going, well, I'm glad I'm not changing the spark plugs on that or anything. 'Cause
that would be an
it's
issue.
pretty fiddly down there. I'd imagine it's broadly the same
Similar
in the
to that,
Twingo, yeah. Because Smarts are. I mean, but I was driving a Smart car once and something went a bit awry with it. I can't remember what. We had it up at Evo. So we took all the covers off to have a little look, as you do. You know, in a normal car, something goes wrong and you pop the bonnet as if the bit that's wrong is going to go, hi, it's me, here. Or it'll be
Big
flashing.
broken.
Yeah. It'll be snapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were sort of peering into it and then someone was sort of trying to crawl underneath it and we couldn't see a damn thing. So I guess it's the same in the Twingo. I'll have a look tomorrow and I'll let you know. But yeah, it's a bit disappointing actually, that Twingo. Because,
Really?
well, because it's very different. It's different. It's
I
a
like the
four-door
look of it,
rear-engine
you know,
car.
it's
I think it looks all right. But
Not many of them since Tata stopped making
no.
Tatra.
Well,
Tatra?
and Skoda stopped making Estelles and things as well. Yes, it's a rare breed. So in engineering terms, it's different to an Igo, an Up, all those other little cars.
Yeah.
But it feels just like them. In fact, if anything, it's not quite as nice to drive as many of them because it's got very low-geared steering, got a lot of turbo lag, weirdly. Remember that? It's like being in the 80s, but not in a good way. Yeah. And, yeah, it just feels quite ordinary. And I thought I don't know what I imagined, but I just thought it would feel different and interesting.
Okay.
It's a great shame that VW didn't manufacture the Up as a rear-engine car, because that would have been the perfect platform for a micro-sized Beetle, which I think would be an enormous hit, because it's so unthreatening. As it is, as a bigger car, I'll accept it. It didn't feel like a big car in the grand scheme of things. It's too big for a city car. And I would welcome the chance to drive some of the bigger engine, more powerful versions of that car. But you know what? I bet they're not as charming as a low-powered Beetle. That's going to be one of the cheapest cabriolets you can buy. I mean, wonderful thing. I enjoyed it. The end. Sorry, I went on.
Well, that's the thing. I just looked at this and basic price on that.
22.
22. Oh,
yeah.
Got it here. Yeah. Your spec sheet says £22,580, and that's without options. There are a few options on it. It doesn't say.
The best option, the sound system. It was Fender branded. I loved that, seeing Fender on it, but by gum, it worked very well. And an open-top car, it was fantastic.
On one level, I know why you're excited by that. Yeah. On another level, my first reaction is just massive cynicism, because Fender make guitar amps that distort. They don't make good stereo systems. Well, which, do you know what I mean? So that's just a bit of branding. That's just getting another brand onto the Volkswagen. And, why?
But you know what? It was a great sound system.
Well, there you go.
It was a great sound system. It genuinely was. Number one son remarked on it. Girlfriend remarked on it. Most of the people in South Wales who heard me listening. And some cars have a resonant frequency. Lovers Rock.
It's probably a Harman Kardon amp. It's probably a Harman Kardon system or something.
This car enjoyed Lovers Rock. That sort of brand of soft reggae.
Slushy reggae,
Yeah, and I drove around South Wales with the roof off listening to that. It was perfect. Good car. It was the 70s all over again. Do you know why I've stopped you, sir? No, officer, was I speeding? In this Volkswagen? Not likely, is it, sir? It's only a 1.2. Oh, well, was it because I was playing my music too loudly? Goodness me, sir, no. I'm an enormous fan of Lovers Rock and all types of soggy reggae. Oh. So why have you stopped me then? It's perfectly simple, sir. The music, the car, the 70s vibe, if you will. Would you like to buy some weed, sir? Go on. We busted Howard Marks again last week. We've got loads of the stuff down the station. Everything is irie, isn't it?
Gareth Jones on speed.
One thing I didn't mention about that Beetle, which I think is probably the greatest thing on that car, the steel wheels. If you see a new Beetle, go and look at the steel wheels. They are fantastic. You don't need lightweight mag alloys to be cool. These old steel wheels were magnificent. We should bring more of those into cars.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a good, honest bit of steel.
I love a steel wheel. It's a bit of a lost art, isn't it? Because alloy wheels, which used to be the preserve of top-of-the-range cars, it seems unthinkable now that in the 80s, the entry-level and sometimes mid-level Mercedes S-Class, Jaguar XJ came with wheel trims. You had to pay more for alloys unless you got the top model. Hubcaps. It sort of seems
horrible plastic wheel trims.
Horrible plastic wheel trims.
Montego wheel trims.
Well, that's the thing. There were some great wheel trim designs because you could probably do a bit more with plastic than you could with alloy, particularly at the time.
Yeah.
But now, everything pretty much has alloys unless you're getting the absolute bum basic model. And even that will have wheel trims on it. What I miss are steelies, proper steel wheels, just
good, honest,
silver,
workmanlike,
with just a centre cap and nothing else. And I think you get them on the Dacia range. The basic Dacias have them. But even that, I think the Dacia Sandero, the bog one that's $6,000, has steel wheels. As soon as you pay another £600 for the one that you want, with it's actually got central locking and stuff, you stick some wheel trims on it. I think, why? What's the shame? Have the steel wheels.
Do you remember the wheels on there?
They won't fall off. They're recessed more, so they won't scuff like the plastic trims.
They're good and hard wearing, and you want a wheel to be hard wearing. It's doing a lot of hard work close to the ground.
Series 2, 3, Fiesta, the base model, the L or the C as it was called in Europe, if I remember. Do you remember the steel wheels on that car?
Where they had cutouts, yeah.
Yeah, it was a classic steel wheel for
That
you.
was, actually, and that was great. And they were on, because I had a Ford Ka, a very early one, and they were on that, except they'd stuck wheel trims over it. And I sort of toyed with prizing off the trims off and spraying the things silver. But actually, oddly enough, the steelies looked much smaller than the wheel trims. The wheel trims were deliberately designed on that car to make the wheels look as big as possible, so they were in proportion to the car, and it looked a bit odd without, so I didn't. And then I think when they ran out of those old Fiesta wheels, later Cats, if you saw them when the trims fell off, they just had much more conventional round hole steel wheels. Yeah. And that was then the Fiesta steel wheel. The only example I can think of a car company making a design feature out of the steel wheel, because it presumably cost them the same to punch triangles out of the rim rather than circles and make it a bit stylish and fair play to them. That was Ford at their best. Yeah. No cost, but some kind of perceived benefit. Yeah. And they're very good at that sort of thing.
The poor Ford Motor Company. You can't buy a Mondeo with steel wheels, can you? Can you buy a Mondeo yet? You can't buy a
Nobody really knows. I think they brought out that new Mondeo and then immediately cancelled it because it was too old. I'm not sure.
Okay, what other old styling or features did we have on cars in the past that are ripe for a comeback? You know what my vote would be, apart from steel wheels, would be the Venetian blinds on the rear window, a la Lancia HPE or, I don't know, Uraco.
Capri's always seemed to have them as an aftermarket, didn't they? I think at a certain point in the up until the 80s.
Venetian blinds.
They sort of, you can have a similar effect, although I suppose it's meant to reference the Miura on the Lamborghini Huracan. Slightly slatty, but not the go into Halfords, buy a big bendy bit of black plastic and stick it over the back window of your Capri or Sierra or what have you. I'm not sure that's going to come back anytime soon. But I think the steel wheel is due a comeback as a sort of new minimalism.
Yeah, the new minimalist car, of which I count the Beetle and the Cactus and the entire Dacia range, is gaining purchase, isn't it?
This is the problem I had with the Cactus, which I liked, but I think it had a slightly confused feeling to it, because on the one hand it seemed like it was designed to sort of be quite upmarket, and the minimalist interior was in an upmarket minimalist way, like a Scandinavian hotel or an iPod or something. Yeah. And there's very few buttons on the buttons there were. The switch pack was ringed in chrome, and they're all quite nice, little soft-touch buttons. You thought they've spent some money here. The door pulls were like the handles off an old suitcase. And again, you thought they've spent a bit of money here. But then there were other bits of it that felt like minimalism for the sake of cheapness. And some of the plastics are a bit thin and scratchy, and there's no grab handles above the doors and stuff like that. They just skimped. And it was sort of like, is this a cheap car and simple so that it can be cheap? Or is it a simple car because of lightness and because they want to be minimalist to appeal to an intellectual customer? And I couldn't quite work out if they even knew that.
Where do you stand then on the almost late Tata Nano? Now, the Tata Nano has not been the hit we were expecting it to be in India. Can you visualise a minimalist Tata Nano-esque car for the UK? Nice steel wheels on the Tata Nano. You know, the minimum automobile, you've heard me say this a number of times on the show, I'm a big fan of. What's the nearest thing we've got on the market in the UK to that?
In a way, I wonder whether it's some of the very cheap little lecky city runarounds and things like the absolutely ghastly G-Whiz, you know. It only works in town. It's not good anywhere outside of the city, but maybe that's kind of the nearest thing.
It's just horrid, though,
it is horrid. There's nothing good about it.
Someone who lives near me, I walk the dog past sometimes, they've got a Skoda Citigo, which is, you know, the VW by another name.
Hey.
And it's the base model.
Yeah.
Now, it's got wheel trims on it, but I think you could probably prise them off and hopefully there'll be a nice steel wheel under there. It's got the black door handles, black door mirrors, so you know it's the base model. It's bright red as well, which you don't get a lot of red cars anymore. That's another thing that should be coming back. Bright cars.
I noticed a red Citigo. It got my attention to the point at which it nearly disconnected me neck.
Jaunty. It looks nice.
Splendid.
And I look at this base model Citigo and I just go, I can't remember how much they are now. I should look this up. But I just thought, well, that's sort of all you need, isn't it?
Yeah.
For zooming around town. I mean, why would you not? Because that feels like a very nicely minimalist car, but in a way where the minimalism is clever. It doesn't feel like you're being sold short. It feels like they've gone minimal because that's the best way.
And Skoda's the kind of company who you trust to put that kind of package together. You know, to do a really good value, well-engineered, no-frills package. No question.
I saw a red Golf, actually, a new shaped Golf.
Handsome.
Just yesterday. Bright red. I started thinking about red cars because I was driving a Kia Soul, which is bright red.
It was.
And I thought,
looked splendid.
That's ace that it's bright red. Golf looked fantastic. And I wonder if this is because some people get the red right, because they get it very vibrant. I also then saw a red Toyota of some sort, and it didn't work. The red wasn't quite zingy enough. And
So,
maybe it's also the shape, but...
There's a very zingy Toyota Aygo in bright orange parked on this road, and the contrast between that big black X on the front and the orange, it looks like a Sniff Petrol car.
He
didn't hear that.
I did. I'm just ignoring it because if I said yeah, you're right, it would imply that I like that bright orange Aygo, and I don't. I like the Aygo to drive, but one of the things, my beef with it is it's trying too hard. That big X thing on the front, all that advertising, I think it's just trying too hard. And it doesn't need to try because it's a very good little car. And also, this is the thing, this new generation of small cars, we're living in a halcyon time for small cars. There's a lot of them around, and there's sort of car companies make no money on them, but there's so many out there now. And I sort of think, well, that means the bar is high. And they're generally very good little things, and they all do their job properly, but some better than
anything
others.
With a big whopping X on it comes just below the bar.
Well, that's the thing you sort of don't... Well, no, it's not. That's the thing, but it was so good to drive. And what's interesting as well is that there's various claims about it. I think the reason people are doing them is because there's a new desire for economy. Petrol's more expensive than ever. And Fiat Twin Air being a great case in point. And my Twin Air does 39 miles per gallon everywhere. I borrowed the new 105 horsepower Twin Air the other week, 39 miles per gallon everywhere. That Twingo I'm driving, I just checked the computer on that. I've had it for a week almost, driving around London, and it's doing 36 to the gallon. It's not what it's claimed. The Aygo, 50 everywhere.
Wow.
So, anyway, I just looked this up. Skoda Citigo, absolute bog basic, 3-door, £8,210. So, you know.
That's a lot of car.
There you go. That is all you need. Just go and get one of those. You need a car.
I'm going to wrap this up, but I'm going to leave us with an observation on little cute city cars. Made not by me, but my number one son the other day. We were out driving together, and he said to me, Dad, you know the Fiat 500 Abarth? I said, yes, the Abarth 500, yeah. Do they make that so blokes can buy them?
Do you know what? We joke, but...
For a 14-year-old, I think it was pretty close to the truth.
They've introduced that Sport with different bumpers on it that looks more like an Abarth without being an Abarth, so you can still have the cheaper engine in it. I think that's the reason why. You mean an automobile, but it's because it's a little bit less girly. You've
been listening to the Less Girly Rich Reporter.
Goodbye.
The not at all girly Zog.
Goodbye.
What did they do? Goodbye. And I would call myself metrosexual, but I like girls and I've never owned a Metro. I was Gareth. See ya.
To send us an email, see pictures, get song lyrics, join our Facebook fan site, follow us on Twitter, or to find out about sponsorship opportunities, go to GarethJones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!